everybody. Remember yesterday when I told you about this big idea for Mark Carney to expand the size of our military, not by actually hiring more soldiers who are ready to fight as warriors, but by calling existing civil servants soldiers for the purpose of tricking the United States and saying, no, Donald Trump, you see, we have doubled our defense budget because we're simply calling paper pushers in the Department of whatever. We're calling them part of the reserve now. It's sort of ridiculous. Here's the phrase from David Pugliesi's report in the Ottawa Citizen. You heard me say this yesterday. They'll shoot guns, drive trucks, and fly drones. I have to tell you, I have done all three of those things, and they're fun. It's like the old joke about the American ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau. That does sound like a party. Is it good defense? Is it good economics? Does it make any sense? Joining us to talk about this is someone who thinks a lot about firearms. It's our friend Tracey Wilson with the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. Tracey, great to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Ezra. I'm really happy to be here.
You know, it's a very strange story. My first thought was, this is wacky. I don't even get it. My second thought was, this is a trick to reclassify paper-pushing bureaucrats as military expenses. It's just an accounting trick. My third thought that I thunk was, maybe it'll get people who would never in their lives have touched a firearm. Maybe it'll get them some firearms training. Maybe it'll normalize gun ownership, I thought. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts. What did you think of when you heard this sort of cockamamie idea to get paper-pushing bureaucrats to become a kind of reserve?
Well, I can tell you that although I have never personally served in the military, I'm not a veteran, there's about 70 years of military experience sitting at my dining room table. And hearing this, it sounds like something out of South Park. It was, it all relates back to a directive signed by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Jenny Kerrigan, where she's looking for ways to increase the reserve force. Of course, it's not only is the Army completely understaffed in Canada, but so are our reserve force and our supplementary reserves. And she's looking to boost that by 300,000, which is insane. So this would include 1 week of training. They'd learn how to handle firearms, drive trucks, fly drones. They would prioritize public servants over regular average citizens by reducing those entry requirements, such as age and physical ability and fitness. So I think it's a recipe for disaster. I think the Canadian military has a rich, solid history in producing some of the world's greatest warriors. And I think that this idea sort of diminishes that. I took a little run over to the Reddit thread with the public servants on there, and they're pretty much saying the same thing. So it's hilarious. They're making fun of their own coworkers in there. And, at the end of the day, I see what Carney's trying to do here. You are right. He is trying to fluff up those numbers to show that he is investing in defense spending. But at the same time, our existing regular force members are working with broken or out of date kit. They're missing things. They're eating expired moldy rations. There's all kinds of places where we can invest money in our military, aside from crossing over paper pushers to call them, makeshift warriors.
I think it's designed to trick Trump, although I don't think it'll trick him. I think it's designed to trick the public. But mainly it's to fool ourselves. I mean, no one thinks that this will be part of a fighting force. I mean, and I really don't, I have a tough time imagining someone who is, the average age of the civil servants is 45. And right. Listen, I'm not saying 45-year-olds can't do things, but when I think of the military, I think of young men in their 20s, physically top fitness, who can run, who can march, who can do pull-ups, I think of the same thing when I think of firemen. If you're not able to carry someone over your shoulder down the stairs, don't become a fireman. It's not, quote, discrimination, other than in the true meaning of the sense, if you can't do it, you're not allowed to do it. I don't know. I think that it's the most unserious thing I've heard in ages.
Yes.
And it's so contrasts so starkly with Pete Hegseth's warrior culture that he's bringing back in the States.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And like, look, there are a lot of positions within the military that are administrative, that are, people sitting at a desk doing paperwork like that. But those people don't need firearms handling or learn how to fly a drone. So if you're looking to repurpose public servants as a measure to reduce spending in the public service and increase your military spending, that's, presented as that. But don't try to pretend that you're going to take, 50 or 60-year-old people, and I'm in that category, right? And send them out there to be soldiers. I think it's dishonest, and I think that on the world stage, it looks like buffoonery, and I worry about the degradation of our Canadian military history when it's almost become like an internet meme at this point.
Yeah. I don't want to make light of it, even though it's so goofy, but it does sound like a low-budget movie starring Eugene Levy as some, 70-year-old civil servant who somehow, through a typographical error, gets recruited into the military or something. Like I could just picture him and his eyebrows just going full tilt, and maybe Catherine O'Hara again, basically the crew from Schitt's Creek. Like it's so goofy. There's so many rich storylines, but that's because it's all making the Canadian Forces the punchline of a joke. And whenever I see something in the military about, we want to reduce the carbon footprint of our military vehicles, we have to be aware of the carbon footprint. I think, what would Xi Jinping think? What would Vladimir Putin think? What would be, and both of those countries, by the way, are trying to make claims in the Arctic. Like, this is not all theoretical. Both China and Russia have ambitions for the far north. How does training, a pink collar or white collar civil servant in Ottawa to drive a truck have anything to do with protecting our Arctic?
There's also this other theory that I have, it's almost like a dystopian idea of disarming your trained and tested civilians at the same time that you're militarizing your bureaucratic public service.
Wow.
I'm not, I'm trying to loosen the tinfoil in my hat here, but I can't help but think about this. Over the last 6 years of this liberal regime, we've got gun ban after gun ban on people like me who are already tested. We are trained. We are vetted. We already know how to use those things. Then they decide to ban those. Then they decide to talk about maybe taking them away from us, confiscating them, and sending them to Ukraine. And now all of a sudden, in the midst of all this, instead of dropping that plan and maybe looking at the civilian firearm ownership community for the possibility of reservists, now they're looking at a bunch of paper pushers and talking about arming them up. So I don't know. I think when you have a government that is disarming its tested and trained citizens at the same time that it's arming up its bureaucrats, I don't know. It makes it even worse than a South Park joke.
That's a very dystopian scenario you've just outlined. I just came back from the ostrich farm in BC, where there was an enormous amount of government firepower. The protesters, the farmers, completely peaceful, not even a hint of resistance or force. But the CFIA, the Canadian Food and Inspection Agency, the RCMP had a huge show of force. And then there was these anonymous marksmen, as they were called, that were brought in to shoot hundreds of birds overnight. And
it sort of speaks to that property rights issue. When we started our federal court challenge against the gun ban, we looked at it, as more of a property rights thing. Like, can the government come into your home or into your space and take away things from you that you've legally owned with no, you've done nothing to warrant that. And unfortunately, so far in the court battle, we've seen that the truth is yes. So whether it's your firearms or your ostriches, the government can take or destroy anything it wants from you. And that's, that's something that all Canadians should have a look at. What's next down the line? I feel like gun owners were just the canary in the coal mine. And we may see more of this type of behavior.
You're so right. And I think a lot of political extremism by the government is only possible with a disarmed population. Like I'm not sure if that absurd, nonsensical, anti-science, bullying ostrich massacre would have happened in a place like Texas or Florida. I think it would more likely happen in a place like Canada that is completely disarmed and where the government is getting more and more audacious. And of course, let me just clarify if anyone misunderstands me. I'm not saying that anyone should have used firearms to stop the government. I'm not saying that. But there is some reason in the Second Amendment and the United States that the people have some power reserved to them in case all hell breaks loose. Like the
Yes.
U.S. Revolutionary War has been lawfully, vindicated in the form of the U.S. Constitution. I don't know. I just think a lot of bad things are happening because we are becoming physically weaker and weaker, and the government is becoming physically stronger and stronger.
Yeah, well, that's another reason why Canadians should really have a look at this. I mean, look, I get it. There, with the budget and the state of the economy that 10 years of the Trudeau government and now the Carney government has put us in, yes, there needs to be cuts to the bloated public service. I understand that. And yes, we need to find better ways to recruit people into the military and to retain the people that are already there who are good soldiers. This, I don't believe, is the way.
Yeah.
So I think that unfortunately it makes a fool of us on the world stage. And sometimes that matters more than anything. So I worry about those things.
Tracey, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Good luck out there. Keep up the fight.
Thanks, Ezra.
All right, there it is. Tracey Wilson from the Canadian Coalition of Firearm Rights.